you start bringing a bit of structure to it. Now what you can also do is you can put in validations. You can build validations, especially with databases, XML files and things like that. You can actually validate some of these data flows. Now this means that when you're running your system tests, if you just validate the data as it flows through the system to make sure it's not outside boundaries, that it contains invoice numbers that actually exist in the other system, all these kind of things, then basically you're getting stuff that's actually relatively easy to do. And it's just literally a matter of you kind of doing the analysis, usually fairly quick, building some routines to validate the data, and incorporating them into your standard testing processes. So you get these little islands of order in the chaos that is some very complex systems. And that's kind of one of the things that we try and do whenever, even with our own product. All we've done is we've got a whole bunch of validation routines. We run some system tests. We run the validation routines. Have we messed the data up? No. Great. And it's a really easy test to do. It's not that hard, and it's really repeatable. You add a new table, you add it into your tests, you move on. And you can basically spend your time kind of working your way through the system, and quite quickly you've kind of got yourself a very structured framework. And as you do some testing, you find out here you've got some items which are not in stock. How did that happen? How can they get through? Something's gone wrong. Something in the system is broken there, so you need to kind of look upstream and try and work out what happened. So you might have a front-end screen which goes into a database. The database might go on to some kind of back-end process. You might have some kind of SOAP message or some Swift banking transaction, which is a flat file flowing through the system. And all you're going to do is basically build some kind of validations. You kind of just check the data as it's flowing through. And at the end, back-end process, you do your data validations and there's a problem. So the chances are somewhere in here there's some kind of error. Okay, so that's kind of quite an easy way of being able to improve your testing without too much work. Let's see this. I'm just going to talk about one project we did, and this was it was a debit card project. If you've been to London, how many have been to London? Nobody. Nobody's been to London. 3. You have these swipe cards, and they're like cash. So instead of carrying rupees or pounds, you just swipe them, and it's just a way of being able to not carry lots of coins in your pocket. So they came out with a new system. It's a very, very aggressive time scale for this. I think they wanted the whole thing done in sort of about 5 months from designing the first screen to implementing the first one. Now what they did is, this was kind of the standard project. They were going to do the database design. They had these various portals designed, and then they were going to build the transaction system, which is actually where you swipe the cards, into the settlement engine, which was quite complicated, into payments, down into banking payments. Within each one of these, there was lots of different subcomponents: development, testing, documentation, training, implementation. All these types of things that you guys would be familiar with. Probably testing is kind of where you guys live. Now the problem is, of course, with this kind of very sequential structure, what you find is that if you find any problems in the payment system, when you can't track back to a card, then you've then got to go back, change the structure, and work your way through. And that's very common. People find problems with the structure right at the end, and they have to go all the way back to the beginning and kind of redo lots and lots of stuff. So you end up with a very sequential delivery. And that's kind of, I would say that's probably most of the projects I've worked on in some way before I discovered the joys of data. Okay. So what we did is we changed that. We got involved early on, and we plugged DataMaker in, and we basically, there were about 70 tables in this database. We generated data for all of the modules. Okay, this one was very hard. It's quite a complex data generation process. The rest of them were quite straightforward, and it meant that basically we could push data into these modules. So you ended up with a very parallel delivery. So no one was waiting. The people who were working on the card system